there's one final fox that we need to deal with. One final fox. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, there's one final fox. And this little fox is called a little loss of credibility. A little loss of credibility. Now, what is credibility? According to the dictionary, credibility is the quality of being trusted and being believed in. It's your trustworthiness. It's your reputation. Can people trust you? What sort of reputation do you have when people hear your name? When people think of you, what comes to mind? What reputation do you have? What name have you taken? And this is what the Bible says concerning credibility. Proverbs 22 verse 1 says this, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. I want you to think about yourself. What name have you taken? What reputation do you have? Not just in church, in your workplace, in your school. If I had to come to your workplace, your family, whatever environment you find yourself, and I say, do you know so and so? Tell me a little bit about them. What will people be able to say? Ecclesiastes 7 verse 1 says this, a good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume, and the day you die is better than the day you were born. You see, when you leave this present world, how will you be remembered? How will you be remembered? Credibility is key if you want to be respected as a leader. John Maxwell, a great leadership expert, says this concerning credibility. He says, credibility is a leader's currency. With it, he or she is solvent. Without it, he or she is bankrupt. Brothers and sisters, if you don't have credibility, you are bankrupt. You are bankrupt. Pastor Rick Warren says this. He says that the most essential quality for leadership is not perfection, but credibility. People must be able to trust you. Do people trust you? Do your kids trust you? Do those in your workplace trust you? You see, a little loss of credibility can lead to a lifestyle where there's always a question mark hanging over you. Can you be trusted? Can you be trusted? Now this morning I want to speak to you about 7 credibility killers. 7 things that can erode and ultimately destroy your credibility if not dealt with. And I'm going to go briefly through these 7 things. You see, we lose credibility when we fail to keep watch in these key areas of our lives. And I'm going to be speaking about 7 key areas which we sometimes fail to keep watch over, and therefore we lose our credibility. So these 7 key things, all beginning with the letter W. Number 1, not keeping watch over your words. And we call this reliability. How reliable are you when it comes to your words? Many years ago, there was a saying, a man's word was his bond. That means what you said was what you followed through on. Do you keep your word? Do you say things and then don't deliver on it? You say things like, don't worry, I'll be there, and then you never pitch up. If you do that, then you are unreliable. Who will be able to trust you if you aren't willing to keep your word? You see, you have to do what you say. You have to do what you say. Numbers 30 verse 2 says this, a man who makes a vow to the Lord or makes a pledge under oath must never break it. He must do exactly what he said he would do. Psalm 89 verse 34 says this, I will not violate my covenant or alter what my lips have uttered. How often do we break our covenant? You see, God doesn't do that. God doesn't do that. In Matthew 5:37, it says this: all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. John Maxwell also says this: when you make a commitment, you create hope. When you keep a commitment, you create trust. How often do we keep our commitments? How often do we say things, don't worry, Pastor, I'll be there, and then we don't pitch up? What is the value of our word? Do we keep watch over our words, over the things we say? As Christians, sometimes we say, don't worry, I'll pray for you. Do we actually pray for people? Do we keep watch over our words? Secondly, not keeping watch over your work. And this we call our responsibility. It's our commitment to do what we signed up to do. And when you work, are you doing things to the best of your ability? It's so sad sometimes when people would say, I'm not going to give business to any Christian business people because of the work they've done. I hope that there's no one like that in this house. Because sometimes we don't watch over our work. We do jobs and then we leave it incomplete. Or we do shoddy workmanship. As a Christian, everything we do should be done with excellence. Colossians 3:23 says this: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, not half-heartedly, not incomplete, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Do we watch over our work? Do we make sure the things we do in our workplace, in our homes, in the house of God, that when we work at it, the things we signed up to do, the things we committed to do, that we follow through? Edward Deming, an American economist, once said that quality is everyone's responsibility. Quality is everyone's responsibility. And so we need to keep watch over our work, the responsibilities we have. Are we doing it to the best of our ability? Or are we doing something shoddy and incomplete? Thirdly, not keeping watch over your wallet. And we call this financial integrity. What's the condition of your financial affairs? Do you cheat people? Do you bribe people? Do you give someone a little something on the side to get the job? When you encounter a traffic officer or a policeman? All of these things concern God. If you're a businessman and you have employees, James chapter 5 verse 4 says this: look, the wages you fail to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. These are the things that concern God. We need to be integral when it comes to our financial affairs, not cheat people. Proverbs 16 verse 8 says it's better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. Better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. Is the wealth you are creating, is it coming through honest means? Or is there some bribery or corruption or dishonesty in any way? You see, what I realize is that God is never going to cheat, rob, or steal from someone else in order to bless you. I had an experience of this when, I think it was last year sometime, we went over to the Meander and we ordered some cool drink, and the person, I was paying by credit card, and on the credit card machine, they actually undercharged me. And it was like, instead of maybe, what was the amount, like instead of 26 Rand, they charged me 2 Rand 60. And in my mind, I could say, wow, God, look at how you're blessing me. God doesn't work that way. And sometimes, that is what we do. We know something is wrong. Someone has undercharged us, or the item wasn't at that price, and the person cashing up made a mistake, and then we don't even say anything. That speaks about your credibility, your financial integrity. No one may ever know about it, but God sees. And sometimes we call that God's blessing. That's not God's blessing. Those are the things that concern God. As I said, God is never going to cheat, rob, or steal from someone else in order to bless you. So let's think about, are we keeping watch of our wallet, of our financial integrity? Are we giving to Caesar what is due to Caesar? Are we paying our taxes? All of those things concern God. Number 4, sometimes which churches don't speak about, which is not keeping watch over your wardrobe, your dignity. Are you always dressed inappropriately? Or do you dress provocatively? You see, we need to dress decently. We need to exercise modesty. I love what this fashion designer named Jessica Ray says. She says, modesty isn't about hiding your body, it's about revealing your dignity. Modesty isn't about hiding your body, it's about revealing your dignity. And so sometimes we can use these excuses. It's my body, I can do what I want with it. And sometimes people say that, well, if you're telling me how to dress, then you're really oppressing me. Because it's my body and I can do what I want with it. But actually, that's not what the Bible teaches us. The Bible says actually that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. 1 Corinthians 10 from verse 23 to 24 says this. You say, I am allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. You say, I am allowed to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. Don't be concerned for your own good, but for the good of others. You see, sometimes we don't realize that sometimes even in the way we dress, we can cause a stumbling block to others as well. I'm not saying that you have to dress like a nun, but what I am saying is you also can't dress with everything hanging out. Not just in church, but even in the workplace. I love what Elizabeth Elliot says. She says, and this is concerning women, but sometimes it's not only women who have a problem with dressing, it's men as well. Sometimes a guy's pants is over here, and his underwear is showing as well. So it's not only women. But this quote by Elizabeth Elliot, she says this, the fact that I am a woman does not make me a different kind of Christian, but the fact that I am a Christian makes me a different kind of woman. We don't have to follow the fashions and the patterns of this world, because Romans 12 from verse 1 to 2 says this, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. And sometimes we lose our credibility in the way we dress as well. Number 5, not keeping watch over your wedding ring. What do I mean by this? This is when we don't protect or safeguard the sanctity of our marriage. And we call this fidelity or faithfulness. That means don't put yourself in situations that put a question mark on your faithfulness to your spouse. You may not be doing anything wrong, but sometimes the way you act with the opposite sex puts a question mark over your character. That means don't be found alone with someone of the opposite sex. Put proper boundaries in place. Now, I'm not saying family members, I'm saying people who, at your workplace, sometimes you're in a corner speaking to someone who's not your spouse, and then there's a question mark over that. I love what 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 22 says in the Passion Translation. It says, avoid every appearance of evil. Sometimes you are not doing evil, but there's an appearance of evil. And this is where we need to safeguard ourselves. We need to protect the sanctity of our marriage. Keep watch over your wedding ring. Also, the information you share with others. You don't go to your workplace, you don't go to your friends and share information about your spouse, the fight you had, the conflict you had. That is not what we do. Number 6, not keeping watch over your watch. We call this punctuality. Should I speak about this one, Melissa? I know Melissa and Stan are big on this, especially when it comes to our serve team. And this is something that God really convicted me on even last year. Because what used to happen is that our service was meant to start at 8:30 last year. And because people were late, we said, okay, let's wait till people are here and then we'll start. But that's a credibility problem. And so this year we decided if our service is at 9, the countdown is before 9 and service is starting on 9. Because we don't want to have a reputation. That church starts late. What about you? Do you have a time management problem? Are you always late? Do you have the reputation where people know that person is always going to be late? They're never going to be on time. We may think that's a small thing, but you're never going to be able to be trusted with great responsibility and great leadership if you have a problem with time. Ephesians 5 from verse 15 to 16 says this, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil." Come on, we have to get better at our time. Sometimes for the things of this world, if a concert is taking place at a certain time, you're going to be there sometimes a few hours earlier, but when it comes to church, sometimes we take our time. Sometimes work demands that you are there at a certain time, but yet when it comes to the things of God, we think, well, God's not concerned about it. No, yes, He is. You see, when you don't stick to time, you show actually that you don't respect people's time. And Philippians 2 verse 4 says this, "Let each of you not only look for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." When you keep people waiting, you are disrespecting them. And so often we think we just keep people waiting. That's the wrong thing to do. And the key to this is good planning. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says this, "Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty." Come on, let's plan better. If we know we need to be at a certain place at a certain time, come on, wake up a bit earlier. God is concerned about punctuality. Let's not be the church that starts late, and when we start, half the church is not here. God is concerned about that. And number 7, not keeping watch over your whereabouts. We call this accountability. If you're not where you're supposed to be, let people know where you are. If you're not where you're supposed to be, let people know where you are. Come on, can't we be accountable? Accountable to your family? Your family is waiting for you and you haven't told them what's happened to you? Romans 12 from verse 4 to 5 says this, "Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body and we all belong to each other." If we all belong to each other, don't you think we are accountable to each other? But so often we think we can just do as we please, that we are island on our own. No, we belong to one another. And if we belong to one another, we have to be accountable to one another. If you're part of a family, be accountable to your family members. If you're part of a team, be accountable to your team. If you're part of a workplace, be accountable. Tell them where you are. And if you're not there, tell them the truth why you're not there. Don't say you're sick and you went fishing. Again, credibility. See, there are benefits to accountability. Ecclesiastes 4 from verse 9 to 10 says this, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. You see, when you are accountable and then something happens to you, there's always someone to help you out. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. If you are not accountable and something happens to you, then you're in real trouble. Thomas Paine once said that a body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not to be trusted by anybody. Come on, you have to have people you are accountable to. So your words, your work, your wallet, your wardrobe, your wedding ring, your watch, and your whereabouts. Are you keeping watch over these areas? Because if you're not, then you're going to have a credibility problem. And if you have a credibility problem, then no one's going to be able to trust you. And sometimes we're also wondering, God, shouldn't I be at a further stage in where I am with you? And God is saying, sometimes the things people don't see, I see. I see where you cheat people. I see where you lie to people. I see all of these things that damage your reputation. And so this morning, this is what I want us to do. I want us to examine our hearts and identify, even if it's a little loss of credibility, it's still something we need to deal with. Even if it's not all 7 of those things, if it's just one of those things, it's still going to damage your credibility. If it is, confess it to God and say, God, I have a challenge with this area. I need you to help me. And then repent of it. If you have a problem with punctuality, don't say, God, I confess that I'm late all the time, and then continue to be late. No. Make a change. And I believe that as you do that, as you make a decision today to be reliable, to be responsible, to have financial integrity, to dress with dignity, and to be faithful, punctual, and accountable, that God will open the floodgates over your life. You will see the blessing of God.